1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Lay It on the Table, the Southern Board Game Podcast with the accent on Southern. As usual, I am one of your hosts, Joe Mahaffey.
And I'm your other host, James Englehart, here on a lovely Sunday morning.
Yes, it is. It is. It's finally, the fall weather is finally coming in, and I'm kind of happy about that. Lower temperatures,
Absolutely.
lower humidity. And today we have an opportunity just to talk about board games. Which is great. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody that coming up on the weekend of November 10th through the 12th is Mythicon. That'll be at the Hilton Charlotte University Place. You can find links to tickets in the show notes below. James and I are planning on being there, walking around, maybe running a game or two and doing some interviews. So we look forward to seeing you there the weekend of November 10th.
I am booked. I see that the pre-registration badges are closed, but I've got mine already, so I'm pretty excited to see people there.
Well, then you beat me to it. I'm going to have to give Richard a call.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we the past several times we've been together, we've had opportunities to talk to different folks and sort of what's going on in the world of different designers or different folks that have been to conferences and stuff like that. And it's been a while since we've just been around to talk about games. And I know that there's a lot of stuff going on in the game world, James, particularly with Spiel.
Yes.
So let's sort of talk about that.
Sure, yeah. So Essen starts this week. I think it starts like Thursday, Friday, something like this. Probably depends. I mean, I guess if you're an exhibitor and you're, meeting people, you're getting there probably Tuesday or Wednesday to make sure everything's there and get set up and try to do what you can about jet lag before you have to go and meet thousands and thousands of people. And of course, Essen Spiel is the big father, Norse gods of, tabletop gaming in this hobby. So they expect hundreds of thousands of people there. It'll be amazing.
That's awesome. And it is in Germany, but where?
In Essen. Hey,
Essen. Okay.
Yeah, downtown Essen. So lovely industrial city in Germany there. So you can find your way over there and hang out.
That was more for the listeners.
Yes. And they are, let's see, they're up to the list on Board Game Geek. You can go and see, not every publisher puts their games up here, but they've got at least 1,200, 1217 is what it shows here. So a lot of different games to keep an eye on, to look for. And I've been looking through as many as I could, trying to get a sense of things. And yeah, it looks like we're still in the world of roll and write games. There's a lot of those coming out, and trick-taking games are still very popular, it seems like. So that pattern seems to keep rolling along, if you will.
Well, and it's nice too when I look at this list to see some games that have been backed on Kickstarter. Like I see The Age of Innovation, I see the Fox Experiment. A lot of things on this list that we're excited to see come out. So it's just nice to everybody's focused on this particular event. Is there anything in particular that you're excited about that caught your eye?
Age of Innovation you just mentioned.
Right.
I'm the sort of new version of Terra Mystica. So that's really interesting, I think. Arborea looks like a big, heavy, fun, and sort of intense Euro with lots of interesting mechanisms. There's a sliding where a piece slides along before you decide which path it's going to go down. So I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but it looks amazing. Forest Shuffle I love my multi-use cards and tableau builders, and so it does a bit of both, and it's aggressively eco-friendly. So you can, if you don't like the game, you can compost it or recycle the whole thing. So I'm pretty excited about that. There's a couple of, so many things that look interesting coming out. I was thinking about our interview with Jamie Stegmaier the other day when I saw Apiary get released, and I thought that was the box that was probably sitting next to him, that he was like, oh, this is the big game that we're going to have for the Q4. And Laura has gotten into beekeeping recently, really interested in it. So I'm like, okay, We've got to have all of that. Thinking about that. There's a couple of beer themed ones that I thought was interesting. There is Bar Pig, the Great Festival. I have no idea what that is, but it'll be interesting. And Beer Pioneer. I have a lot of beer and things to talk about too.
I see that.
Yeah,
I'm still I'm still trying
yeah.
to process that somebody might actually not like a game so much that they would compost it. I mean, I'm just trying to get my brain around that.
If you have to, yeah. Opposed to setting it on fire, I guess. There's a new version of Kalimala coming out. There's the new Cascadia. There's a cat horror movie festival game. I don't know what that's about.
There's even a new edition of Carcassonne.
There is. I saw that was on the list. There's a new version of, let's see, we did Kalimala. Zularedo has a new update coming out as well. So,
and I noticed that
and Darwin's Journey is coming to shelves. So, yep.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just noticing that myself. We love that game. That's a great game.
Yeah, and I'm there's for those of you who are interested in Old Testament stuff, there's an Ezra and Nehemiah game coming out, which looks pretty good and has, I don't know if you're keyed into that, then that's a thing to look at.
That is something I am keyed into, so I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, man.
I also noticed that right just before that on the list is Everdell Farshore, and I got to tell you, I got all the Everdell I got. I think I'm good. I don't need any more.
Yeah, I know. It has people really like it, and I think it's a standalone. So, but there's a lot more going on there. And there's a lot of fun. There's some fun party games. There's this fiction game that's guess the secret word from classic literature that looks like that could be fun. There's a couple of newspaper games coming out. So Fit to Print is one of them with starring woodland animals. So
Grandpa, what's a newspaper?
There you go.
Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
And yeah, there's a couple of polyomino games that kind of get a little more abstracted that are just like, here you get one. It almost feels like, Tetris, the board game again. So,
polyomino games are great. I find that people that really get into puzzles really like that. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but Dale and I finally started playing Race to the Raft, which has got that feel to it.
Awesome.
City of Kings games, they love to do the polyominoes, but there are a lot of others out there that do that as well. And so it's very satisfying for those puzzle people.
Yeah. Oh, no, it absolutely is. And, Laura and I love to sit down and play Patchwork. It's, pretty straightforward. I'm trying to get her to play Spring Meadow. That should be interesting too. But here coming out, we've got, this is one that just struck my fancy because it's Hegemony, lead your class to victory. So it's about sort of Marxist struggles, I guess, in Europe.
Okay.
By Vangelis Bagirotakis and Varnabas Timotheou. So I'm guessing very Greek in their vibe. And there's a new version of Hey, That's My Fish as well. So that's always good. There's another sort of Arctic themed game, Eluliak. So I don't know what that's going to be about, but I'm always interested in things that seem Alaskan or far north. So that'll be interesting.
So I'm curious as we look as you look at this list. I mean, we see some things that are some known properties. We see some things that are known publishers, and we even see some things that might even be another edition or another version of the story or an add-on to the story. Is there anything that caught your eye that is like new, that could be a breakout one-hit wonder or breakout new kid on the block? Like, we talked about Flamecraft a lot last year as sort of this unexpected game, and even that had some, pedigree to it. I just kind of wonder, is there anything that kind of catches your attention that is like from a designer that you've never heard of before or somebody that just appears to be new?
Well, the going sort of back up to the top, Forest Shuffle is, I think, it's a small box. It's a intriguing tableau builder, and I think it's going to have that kind of. I mean, I look at games we know, and kind of I like the work that they bring. I do not know who Kosh is, and so I don't know if this is like a first. Let's find out. This is maybe their second game, so I think that'll be one to look for. I think some of the ways that Arborea moves your workers around, I think is going to be interesting. So those are a couple that I'm really interested in. I want to see. I'm a big fan of Terra Mystica, and so I'm interested to see how that new version comes together. It promises to do really good stuff. So that makes me happy. Makes me happy. Yeah. So those are a couple of those. Yeah.
And the reason I ask the question is that sometimes we find ourselves, you get a game and the mechanic of the game is like another game, but it's just reskinned.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, I like the original better. And you kind of, and I'm not suggesting that that's the case here. I'm just kind of wondering if there's something that kind of caught your attention as something new and fresh and all that. So,
I mean, it's hard to find things that are entirely new, right? It's just
like Mancala, for example.
Right. It just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
And so what I'm looking for more are sort of thematic interests or how people put these things together. So the way that Forest Shuffle works, you've got animals that could go you're playing a tree down, and you got animals that can live in the top of the tree, animals that live in the side of the tree, things that live under the tree. So you've got you're building a little ecosystem. They're all built around those. What the thing can do is where it goes, and then and I just like the way that that's kind of happening. There's one called Sky Team, which is I've heard a couple other people talk about, which is, I think it's a dice manipulation sort of a game, but you're working together as a pilot and co-pilot, it's a 2-player only, to like move ailerons and move, so land a plane together. So I think that sounds like fun. Yes.
I'm waiting for autopilot.
Yes.
From Airplane.
The autopilot, I believe.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So I appreciate you kind of giving the perspective on that, because I think, this can be, when you look at this, and obviously we're going to have links to these games in the show notes below, but you can go to BGG and you can see the full list of Spiel Essen for 2023. And there's a lot here. It can be very overwhelming when you're kind of looking through it. Now, there are some things, like I said, that we've seen before, or that are in Kickstarter mode. Like I see Hamlet by the Lake here is in Kickstarter mode.
Yep.
And a few others. And so it's just sort of nice to see that they're going to be at Spiel Essen, just because, sometimes you back a Kickstarter and you're like, is this really going to show up?
Yeah. And is it going to show up in the broader marketplace as well, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I noticed on here is the Obsession German edition. And after talking to Dan last time about, how he's kind of, a one-man show, so to speak, getting these things into the ecosphere is part of that. And you see he's got a publisher, Stroman Games, helping him with that in Germany. And so it's just nice to see that, because that's a game that's, keeps on, trudging forward.
No, I was seeing that because I wanted to mention that he's going into all these different countries at this point. So that's very cool to see that showing up.
Yeah, 100%. Well, cool.
And then there's this weird one coming out, the strange forgeries of Mr. S.C. Reber, which looks like it's kind of supposed to be sort of a party game, but it's kind of also sort of intense, where you're trying to figure out who is doing what art forgeries, and there's a serial killer kind of in the center of it. So, that's one that I thought, well, that's a weird set of things.
I'm the guy doing the stick figures that are being placed on your refrigerator, just so you know.
See, there it is.
That's me.
And then things I'm like, did Terraforming Mars, the dice game, need to happen? I don't know, but it's happening.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that's, you know, you look at all some of these brands and you see people recycling certain things and that are just about the brand itself. And that one kind of struck me in the same way. And I don't know. It's just,
well, and so it's kind of a fun. So I'm looking at the re-implementation of the new version of Zilretta that's coming out, and I thought, well, this is sort of inevitable, right? It won the Spiel des Jahres several years ago. It's a fantastic, 2007, I guess, a fantastic game, and all of a sudden there's all these zoo games that have come out, and I'm sure that Michael Schacht and his publisher were thinking, Abaka Spiele, you know what? We've got this. It had a couple of critiques back when it first came out, but we can brush this off, fluff it up a bit, and whoosh, see what we can do with the new audience who, 2007's there's a whole bunch more people into the hobby than were that back then. And I bet we could get some traction with this. So
it's almost like, since there's a popular bird game, we should put out a bird game.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Or better yet, we should just get all of our fans of the bird game to make their own versions of the cards, and let's republish the cards with fan art. Oh, wait, never mind. That's been done.
Yeah. That seems familiar somehow. Yeah. So, lots of good stuff. Lots of interesting things to watch for. And it's, I don't know, I think there's going to be some good stuff. There's some good heavy stuff coming out, and some just all the wonderful weirdness that people like, let's make a game about mimic octopi.
Well, I think it'll be interesting because I think it'll give us a lot of things to talk about over the year ahead, because I'm sure between you and me, and anybody that we bring on, we will find these games on our table. Like, I know for a fact that the Fox Experiment will end up on my table, as well as the Age of Innovation. And so hopefully we can talk about those and others. So,
and I know Forest Truffle is definitely going to be coming to my table as well. So,
excellent.
Yep. Yeah.
Alrighty then.
So one other new thing that's happening these days is the Zenobia Awards. I wanted to touch on that briefly because that's really exciting and important. So 2 years ago, the Zenobia Awards kicked off. They're a long process, these Zenobia Awards. It is a competition, as it says on their website, and mentoring program for game designers from underrepresented groups. Mm-hmm. And so you develop and then submit historical tabletop games. And it goes through a couple of different rounds. The 2021 started off with 150 applicants. They whittled it down to 46 proposals, 8 finalists, and then they had 3 winners. But I was listening to an interview, and I think all 8 of those finalists have gotten publication contracts elsewhere. So
that's awesome.
Really exciting. It opened today, and it runs, I think, for about 2 weeks, a month, something like that. So that's something that I think is really excited to keep an eye on.
Well, when I saw this in your list, it really caught my attention, and I think you know why.
Tell me more.
You and I actually went to college with somebody named Zenobia.
I thought you were going to go there, but I wasn't. Sure. Okay.
I was like, oh, I sort of did a double. It's not a very common name.
It is not.
At least in our culture, it is not. So it may be common elsewhere, but yeah, no, that was the first thing I thought of. Oh, how ironic that is. But yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think that's the thing. I don't care what it is. Music, software, game design. There's a lot of creative folks out there that deserve an opportunity for their work to be seen, heard, experienced. And so I'm glad to see that there's, as we sort of talked about last time, how, the crowdsourcing platforms have really sucked a lot of the air out of the room from any kind of entrepreneurial approach because of how publishers will use that as sort of a pre-order mechanism. It's nice to know that there's other ways that people are advocating for different types of design communities to get their work shown. And I think that that's going to be an important part of how we move things forward, because I think a lot of those platforms are they get addicted to the dollars that come with the higher profile pieces, and that becomes a bit more restrictive. We're seeing that with other platforms like Patreon and others that have similar challenges. And so there is a movement more and more through direct supporting mechanisms.
Yep.
We're seeing it in other places, like with influencers and folks like that. I'm curious to see how that will eventually permeate its way down into this hobby. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. That's true.
But anywho, cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So lots of stuff going on in the industry, big time of year. So we'll see what the news comes out of that, and we'll have a lot to talk about there, I'm sure.
I hope so.
But in the meantime, it's all about what's been on our table. Normally I let you go first, but since I don't have a ton to talk about, I might go first since we've
Do it, man. Yeah, go for it.
It's been a hot minute since we've talked about games. I think the last time we had an opportunity to talk about what was on our table, we still had Scythe out there. In fact, was able to finally get Scythe into the game store with a couple that we hang out with there, and a friend of mine who'd been wanting to learn Scythe. So we had a 4-player game going.
Nice.
I was actually able to 3D print a factory that we put on the table. So that kind of made it interesting as from an aesthetic point of view. We had a lot of people coming by the table as we were playing. And then, and I had also done the 3D print on how to put all the Scythe things into the big box that I had shared earlier. And so we were able to do that, and that was cool. And so, yeah, that was kind of neat. And then once we finally put Scythe away, which we did eventually, Dale and I got out Boop,
which is adorable.
Which is absolutely adorable. So we got the Boop out, and we played Boop, and we played Boop, and we played Boop, and we played Boop some more.
Played the Boop out of it.
And I've decided that I needed an ability to pack Boop up more succinctly. So I actually have designed the Boop board game insert, and it is available for free. Download the link in the show notes below. You can find it on Thingiverse. And I did it in 3 parts so that each person kind of put their cats and kittens in their own little container. And then I have the piece in the middle that is sort of the bridge, if you will, that's got the word Boop on it, as close to the logo as I could get it. And then somebody else had made 3D printable Boop caricatures, because the game was evidently hard to find. So the guy just did this. And unfortunately, they weren't to scale because I tried to use them in a different way to kind of give each person their own little hole. But I did use them as imprints, and so I gave him credit for his work, or their credit. I honestly don't know. In my Creative Commons.
So that looks great, man.
Yeah, so that was.
I'm looking at the whole 3 pieces there. That looks fantastic.
Yeah, and it fits in the box perfectly, and you put your little quilt on top of it, and it holds it nice in place. And so it was a fun thing. It was the first thing I'd ever designed and created myself as something I'm going to 3D print, and I did it in such a way that it minimizes your PLA usage. The filling, so it's a little thinner on the inside. You could probably crush it with your hands, but you always have the ability to change that.
So don't lean on it. Yeah.
We have the ability to change that in the 3D print world, but yeah, I was pretty proud of that.
That's awesome. It looks fantastic too.
Well, thank you.
I love those kind of inserts where you can just take them out and then you're just good to go.
Well, yeah, and that was the thing. My favorite thing is when an insert helps you get the game on the table very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And because this is a game that's 2-player and each person has their cats and kittens, you just take your tray and you're ready to go. Flip the board over and all is well. So that was fun. So yeah, that was my my creative work there for the week. And then we finally got out Race for the Raft. And that is the latest version, or the latest addition to the Isle of Cats world, if you will. And these are the cats that you didn't quite get off the island before he gets there. Yeah. And so the island is on fire, and you're trying to get the cats to the raft before the fire prevents you from doing so. So it's kind of a co-op. You're working together.
Okay. Good.
And the thing is, now when Dale and I played as a 2-player game, we're following the rules, but there is a rule that says you use more code words than not, and we just haven't quite gotten to that level because we're not like saying I have this, do you have that? That's against the rules, but we are kind of implying our abilities without following it exactly to the letter as it's written in the rules. Now, when if we were to play with more than just the two of us, we would gladly follow those rules, but honestly, it's just too much to remember while we're hanging out and just using the game time for fellowship, really. So, but anyway, we've enjoyed the game, and it's campaign like. So there's a book, and so you kind of do the easier versions, and then you turn the page, and then you set the game up. So the way it's set up is the colors of the cats, the numbers of the cats, where the fire is can change from module to module.
Okay.
And so it can be, so you kind of check them off as you go.
That's awesome.
And it gets a little complex because you got to think through your pathways, because in some instances, let's say you have an orange cat and a blue cat. In some instances, you may have to get your blue cat from the left side to the right side before you can bring your orange cat down, because their pathways are going to overlap and potentially block somebody.
Okay.
And prevent them from getting there. And then there's also certain pathways that your cat has to get on the raft. Like the blue cat must come in from the north, whereas the orange cat must come in from the west to the raft. And so it can get pretty complex the further you go. And it's kind of like, the only way I can think about it is, you know how in Pac-Man every level gets harder and harder and harder, but you're kind of doing the same sort of thing. It's a lot like that. I mean, it's like you're moving up in skill, and so the complexity of it is getting hard. And of course, every time, there's certain triggers that make the fire increase, and the fire are all, wait for it, polyominoals that you are putting all over this thing, and the board can change dramatically. So I mean, the thought behind it is absolutely amazing, but it takes a little thought as you kind of look at it and go, oh, because the first one was like, wow, that was pretty easy. We have beaten the fire. We have yet to lose to the fire. But my sense is that's going to change very quickly, because as it gets more complex, and it's easy to miss something, and the fire can all of a sudden cut off one of your, and then once one of your cats is cut off, you're done. The game is over.
Okay.
You don't get to, you either rescue them all or you lose.
Okay.
So anyway, fun game. It's great because it starts out easy, and then you can kind of work your way up. And then of course, if you have somebody new to the game, you can go back and start over, and it's cool. So anyway, that is the game. Oh, and the other video game, tie-in is you have 4 decks of cards. One has an X, one has a square, one has a triangle, and one has a 0 or an O. Just like the, I guess that's the PlayStation controller.
Yeah, the controllers. Yeah, that's pretty hilarious. So that's awesome.
So that's another kind of homage to the video game aspects of it. Anyway,
awesome.
So those are the main things that have been on our table. We've had a lot going on, so we were hoping to get something out. We thought we'd play Obsession since the last time we were together, but that didn't happen. We thought we were going to get one of the Carcassones out on the table when my daughter was here this weekend, but that didn't happen either. So maybe today we'll get something out. That's the plan. We my oldest daughter had a birthday this weekend. She was in town.
Happy birthday.
We thought we would get something out on the table, and they went to the mall instead.
Okay. No, the mall is nice.
So.
Okay. Yeah. So, we had, for a while, we were playing a fair bit of Beer and Bread.
Yeah.
So this is Scott Alms from 2022. So it's still out there. It's a 2-player only. So it fits, it's fantastic if you've got 2 players, which we do. It also, so this is Scott Alms, who might be familiar from the Tiny Epic series.
Oh yeah.
Heroes of Air, Land, and Sea, and a bunch of other stuff. So, and this, as I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite things, multi-use cards. And so you can use the card to either sort of give you bonuses as you go, or you can play them as the resources, or you can fulfill the recipe that's on them and, play them as either beer or bread. What's interesting about this, or one of the things that's interesting besides the multi-use cards, which always gives you, I think, really great decision spaces, right? I really like this recipe. I need this to fulfill this other thing. Oh, but it also gives me the resources that I need for this other card. Oh, but then this one has such great, so it has a lovely moment of that. And then there's an interesting pattern of how the cards sort of weave back and forth. So every other turn you pass your hands back and forth. So you get a certain number of cards to start out with, and then you play one, pass, play one, pass. They come back into your hand. Then you don't pass them back and forth, but you can trade them with a sort of a neutral market on the board. And so it's interesting to watch the way the cards move back and forth and trying to figure out which cards you could keep, which ones you hope will come back to you, which ones you will hate draft because you know that you can't give, the person across the table for you that card because they're going to score something huge. So it's super fun for that. It goes, man, I want to say we were going through a whole game in like 20 minutes when we really had the rhythm going. So that was a super fun one that we liked.
It's funny. I keep a stack of Game Trade magazines that I pick up from the store, and this game has been on the cover since February of earlier this year, and it's always on the top of my stack. So I see it all the time. But I didn't know anything about the game other than what was obviously was in the article, of course. Mm-hmm. But I haven't read it since February.
It goes really quick. It's a nice quick play. Yeah,
nice. We'll have to check it out.
You should. And it's got really, it has that sort of inevitable Euro sort of brownness to it. So that's kind of bad. You're like, oh yeah, it's beer and bread. I guess they're both kind of brown. Oh well. So if you like UPS trucks, this is definitely the aesthetic for you.
There you go.
I don't think I managed to talk about Concordia in any depth last time.
Yeah, we kind of had a bit of a drop there. Yeah.
Okay. So played Concordia at the game night. This is a 2013 Kennerspiel nominee by Matt Gertz. It's a super good game. The maps changed, so it might play well with 2 players on the smaller map, but it was really good to play this with like 3. And I think 3 or 4 would probably be the sweet spot. It plays up to 5, I think, but I can't imagine that would be a really great experience. Matt Gertz is famous for doing rondelles. Here, the rondelle is a small deck of cards, and you get to buy some more. And I love the simplicity of on a turn, you play 1 card. That's it. But that card will only let you do one thing. So you can't move and get a resource. Moving is 1 card. Resources are different cards.
Gotcha.
And that happened to us at the table. We're like, okay, so I'm going to move here and get, and like, nope, no, you don't. It's like, damn it. Okay. So you have to think a couple of turns in advance. And unlike something like Century Golem Edition or Century Spice Road, when you have to take your cards back into your hand, you also get sort of resources when you do that. So it's not just wasting a turn to pick stuff up.
Nice.
Yeah. Also, and it has a million different versions of it out there now. And it's a beloved game. I don't need to talk about it too much more because you can go and find 1,000 different ways to play it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important. I think it's important though that people know that there are legacy games out there that have been around for a while, and the reason they're still around and they're playable is because they stand the test of time.
Yep. It's really slick and sleek. It's not overloaded with a bunch of stuff. It's nice.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. Unlike the next one I want to talk about is Heaven and Ale, because why not beer?
Sure.
So this is Michael Kiesling and Andreas Schmidt from 2017, so a couple of years ago. And you are monks making beer, hence Heaven and Ale. So it's awesome. This is my favorite kind of monks, the ones that are making beer. it's a nice game. It's got a shared board with resources for purchase, monks for hire, and then a couple of scoring options. And then on your personal board, you've got these hexes. There's a dark side and a light side. There's a shady side and a sunny side, and you get different things based on where you put those resources. They earn you money and move the brewmaster depending on what they're doing. You have a resource tracker up along the side, and you just have a number of rounds based on the number of players that you've got. You play through the rounds that are there, going around that track and trying to put things in the right place. There's a funky little scoring dance when what you're trying to do is move as much as you can up those tracks and get your brewmaster as far. And then there's a multiplier. It gets sort of a little weird, but it takes a second. And there's some little smaller goals that you can achieve as you go around. But it's one of those games where once you wrap your mind around the terminology and the iconography and try to figure out how the systems interact, and you think, oh, I should play this entirely differently next time. And so I like that moment of like, okay, we've got a lot of space to keep exploring here. So really looking forward to playing more of Heaven and Ale.
That's awesome. I've seen it. Just never heard anybody talk about it. So that sounds pretty intriguing.
It is, and unlike the Beer and Bread, it has a very colorful cover. So,
well, my beer story from the weekend was yesterday. I got out on my bike ride and I put in at the James K. Polk historic house, which is on the Little Sugar Creek Greenway here in Charlotte, Pineville area, and right next door is the Waldhorn German restaurant.
Yeah.
Very popular spot. It is October, so it is now in Oktoberfest mode. As I got on my bike ride, I got maybe a mile away from the James K. Polk, headed north away from the Waldhorn. And I mean a pack of bicyclists. I mean, like, this must have been like 20 some odd bicyclists.
Wow. Okay.
Dressed in German dresses and lederhosen. We're headed south.
Oh, man.
And I was like, okay. And I went all the way up to Noda, so about 15 miles away. And then I turned around and came back. As I was getting close to being back at the James K. Polk, I was encountering the same pack of 20 bicyclists. The difference is, while I was riding north, my sense is they went to the Waldhorn, had a few beers, and then got back on the bike. And I was
awesome.
Like, ooh, should I pull
Sounds
over?
very German. Yeah.
So there was, that was funny. It was like, oh, wow. Okay, sure.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, but what was great was the lederhosen, the German dresses, and the whole Heidi pigtails kind of thing going on. It was pretty funny. Has nothing to do with board games, but it was very close to Carolina Tabletop Games.
Hey, there you go.
Not a sponsor. Which, by the way, it is Extra Life weekend. We should be calling that out. And there is a lot of Extra Life activity going on at the game store this weekend. I'm kind of staying low out of the public eye because we've got a wedding next week, and there's been a bit of a spikiness in COVID, and I'm just not trying to put myself at risk unnecessarily. So I will be skipping the Extra Life festivities, but they do have a really cool bunch of things going on up there. Some giveaways and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that aren't at game stores, you've got a bunch of Kickstarter stuff. Why don't we skip on down to that? And what have you got here with this modular thing?
Yeah, well, but that's my 3D print kind of fetish thing going on there. Fetish is probably not the right word there, but we're going to leave it.
Yeah.
We'll just not let that be unpacked in an odd way. Interest, we'll call that interest. Yeah, so I saw this. I had almost backed a Kickstarter from these guys earlier this summer.
Okay.
That was more like display cases, that you could put around your house. You could hang a 3D, a display case, and you'd have the mini works that you did and display them. And I'm like, I don't really need that because I mean, the minis that I do, I'm not going to put all over my house for people to see. But this one was interesting because I'm always looking for modular storage for the minis. And this allows you to basically print that and a couple of different options. There's like a small, medium, large, extra large,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon how much PLA you're willing to invest. And I kind of like this because then I could begin to think about, okay, this is the pirate stuff and this is the D&D
Right.
stuff. And so I thought that would be interesting, and it wasn't that expensive to back. So I like that
270 miniatures. That's a lot of
in
PLA
the big box. Yeah. And plus you can, they have the different, way you can do it modularly. So if you have a really large mini or a large print, like some of these, I don't care if you're doing D&D or if you're doing Warhammer or you're doing something else, there's certain ones of different size. And I just thought that, although, like, Feldherr, which I think is one of the more popular, I probably didn't say that right, one of the more popular storage cases that you can get on Amazon. Okay. They generally cater to like these cushiony inserts for 28 millimeter. Right. This gives you a little bit more versatility, and it's it ties the hobby to the 3D print, which I thought was pretty cool.
No, that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Beyond that is Canopy Evergreen. I backed that. It's not really an expansion as much as it is a sequel.
Okay.
To Canopy, and we like Canopy a lot. We like the designer. We like the aesthetic. Thought this was a nice addition. This is a much larger box, therefore a larger game. Whereas Canopy is a very small box, cards kind of thing. But we enjoy the game and thought this would be a nice add-on to that. So something in the world of Canopy without being an expansion, which is one of those things where. And I think the next one kind of ties into that. In some instances, we get some of these expansions in the add-on, and then Dale looks at me and goes, I just like the base game.
Well, and this one has a bunch of fun bits and shared board and all kinds of stuff. So
So we thought that was kind of intriguing. And then this other one on the list just literally showed up yesterday. We had gotten Oceans, not through the Kickstarter originally. There was a lady who had gotten the Kickstarter editions, had gotten like 3 of them and basically offered them to my friendly local game store. And I just happened to be on the Facebook chat when the question came around, and I was like, I messaged him on the side, if you get these, I will buy one.
Cool.
And so we got the original Oceans from the Kickstarter edition, had played it at the Waldhorn, which is where Queen City Games meets once a month.
Okay.
So there's a gaming group that meets over at the Waldhorn, same place that I mentioned earlier with the beer. So I guess there is a game tie-in. Beers, bikes, and games.
There you go.
And so this is an add-on to that where you add some of the more mystical sea creatures as well as a solo mode. And so we backed this, and it showed up today with a new box to put everything in, so it's all in one box.
Nice.
So that was kind of neat to see show up. So that is my backed and or delivered list.
Yeah.
I've sort of taken a step back from a lot of the Kickstarter stuff. Number one, because it's easy to just get sucked in. I think I'd mentioned the last time I see that we're intrigued by Harvest, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on it. I felt really really weird about that. But yeah, so those are some of the ones that I'm either have backed or paying it or have arrived. And from what I understand, I keep getting updates. Zoo Tycoon is, you remember we talked about that a long time ago, thinking, I don't know if I'm going to back it. And then I backed it. It's allegedly it's allegedly in the country somewhere.
Okay.
Which should mean it's showing up soon. So hopefully I'll be able to talk about that soon and compare and contrast to all the other zoo games.
Yeah. It's a zoo kind of time of year.
Yeah.
And speaking of animals, so the ones that I've got here, I was looking at, I got a little email, from BGG, and we'll sign up to get all kinds of notifications and newsletters from them. And it had, Kickstarters for Perch, Flock Together, and Harvest, and then another one later for Peacemakers.
Okay.
And these are all animal-themed games. And then, of course, Apiary is coming out, which is kind of a 4X-y sort of thing off in the science fiction future of hyper-intelligent bees taking over. And I was struck by how many games we've got coming out. And if you go through that Essen list, you'll see even far more of these that are sort of animal centric. And I have noticed, I was just thinking, there's a bunch of sort of modern classic, contemporary classic games that got called out for a lot of colonialist tendencies, and they still are. And there's a big conversation around that. And I'm noticing that one of the ways that publishers and designers, but probably publishers, are getting around that issue is anthropomorphic animals.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
because
we don't have to worry about hiring a sensitivity coach or anything. We can just say, you know what, birds.
Well, and I think that's a more modern version of the conversation. And
yes.
It's a very important one. Don't get me wrong. I'm not.
Oh yeah.
I'm not trying
absolutely.
to belittle that in any way, shape, or form. I think it also, and maybe this is a variation on the same thing. It also makes it easier to localize for other markets.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. A cow is accessible pretty much around the world.
Yes.
And I think that that's a big part of that as well, because translating these games into markets, because it is a worldwide hobby. It's not just a hobby that exists here, and we've talked about some of those things, and so I think it's good, and plus I think it also helps the overall theme in the sense that it takes you out of what is a game to do? It's designed to let you have some fun, but it's also designed to kind of take you someplace else. Yes, in some instances, and I think it does that really well.
And I think to sort of expand on the localization question, I mean, as these games move out into the world, and it's not just middle-aged, upper middle class white people who are playing them. The reason that Puerto Rico started getting this bunch of pushback was a man from Puerto Rico who's like, you know what, this is not good. The Mombasa game, people were saying, no, this is terrible. You have to think about the people who actually lived these historical moments, and you have to treat them with respect and the history with some respect. And if you're, sitting in an industrial park in Holland, and you're thinking, we could just put it somewhere in the Middle West, it'll be fine. We don't have to worry about native or indigenous people. We'll just put whatever, mash things together. It'll be great. And then it gets to those people and they say, what the fuck, man? So yes, I think these are all tied together, right? One of these is, if you're going to put out perch, you don't have to worry about, do we need to put the local birds from Southeast Asia in there? I think, people will be fine. Birds, we know birds. It'll be good. But it's interesting to watch all of this kind of work through all at the same time. So many of these sort of themes showing up at the same time. It was interesting to notice.
Well, and I think it does something else too. Is it creates a platform for the artists. Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about the importance of art. And we see a lot of, there's the whole, on the one side, there's the debate of, is this accessible to everybody from a cultural point of view, and does it represent the history correctly, et cetera? And we can talk about that. And then there's also this idea of AI art and AI and its impact on all kinds of creative mechanisms. And, we've already seen examples where you can go to AI and say, create me a game. Yep. And it'll do it. It'll do it within limitations, of course, but it'll do it. And right. I think that, there's all kinds of AI art out there that is becoming problematic. In fact, I heard recently that even Getty has come out with their own AI.
Wow.
That is it's evidently carved out very specifically, and it only looks at their database. But then there's this movement of some photographers that are like, I'm going to pull my stuff off of Getty if that's the case.
Yeah. I have friends who are authors, and they're having the same. Yeah.
So it's a challenge, and in my professional world outside of gaming, I'm involved in technology, and we talk a lot about AI, and I'm hearing a lot of conversation around organizations that want to use the AI, but they want to contain it. They want to isolate it so that it's only feeding back off of the data that it's given, as opposed to scraping the world. Because you've already seen companies like Samsung have their intellectual property accidentally let loose in the wild because somebody used a public AI in that way.
Oh,
and
wow.
People are trying to avoid that.
Sure.
But also harness the things that it can do. It's like anything else. It's like AI can be like a hammer. You've got this wonderful tool that can help you build something, but you can also smash a window with it.
Yeah.
So it's all about sorting that out. But hopefully, as we see things like the writer's strike has ended and they have made some appropriate, I wouldn't say concessions around AI. They've set some guidelines around it of disclosure. Right. And I think that's going to drive. I know we're getting deep in the weeds off topic of a game, but I think it is on topic of the game, because I think we're going to see more of that as people try to think, how quickly can I get a game to market?
Yep, I think that's right.
And if I don't have to pay an artist, I mean, we talked about with Dan last time.
Yeah.
When we asked him about the art on his cards, is like, I went into the public domain and I found photographs from the era that I could use at no charge because they're in the public domain. And that was a creative way to do it.
And we know one of the things that Fricks Games is doing with their new Kickstart expansions for Terraforming Mars is paying artists for a set of things and then using their own AI on that art to generate cards to do other things. So I think, and the artists, I think from what I could see around the conversation, knew what was going on, signed off on it, got paid. But then Fricks was like, yeah, but this is going to give us a library of material that we can then use in a bunch of different ways. And that feels kind of like what you would do in the days before AI as well. Say, hey, here's a bunch of canvases or digital canvases, and you can cut it and rearrange it however you like. I mean, once I signed the rights over to you, and there's like, yeah, we're doing the same thing. It's just with this new tool. So,
and I think if as long as your people are acknowledging it and people are getting paid for their work, and and if they're licensing it over or they're signing it over and all that, and they're being paid for that, that's totally fine. That's an individual's choice. And so again, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole.
But we got back into games, man. So we did well.
We did. But I would contrast that too. I mean, I made a comment earlier about the fan art.
Oh yeah.
That Stonemaier Games has produced for Wingspan. And I think that's wonderful because, one of the wonderful things about this hobby in general, and this is also true when you get into the tabletop games or the role-playing games, is the amount of fan art that is out there.
Yes.
You look at, I love, one of my favorite things about the Critical Role organization is that, they actually spend time curating the art that their fans make, and they will put it out there during the break of the show when it's live on the live stream.
Oh,
and they
awesome.
have music that plays, and they're showing the art of the fans, and they're really honoring the work that they did because it's an homage. And you look around, and there's that fan art is, everything has some fan art.
Sure.
And and I think that I love that.
And you build an audience with that acknowledgement of it and embrace. I think that's just so smart.
Yeah. So I think that the way, Jamie and them thought about that to bring that forth, I think is very creative. Not sure that I need it because I really like the work of the original artist. But that's, it's a time and place kind of thing.
Sure.
So anyway, back on topic.
Sure.
You have
the last one that I've got here looking at Kickstarter stuff, and I think this is probably closed by now, but Stan Lee's Genesis just looked like this amazing hagiography of Stan Lee. It's like, well, speaking of people with sometimes problematic histories and also a bunch of influence. So, but yeah, I just thought it's Stan Lee's Genesis. Celebrate his genius. I'm like, oh man.
Well, so, he was a genius. Unfortunately, I've always been more of a DC person than a Marvel person. That's hence the shirt I'm wearing. Those are it's a Batman
there
shirt.
it is.
But yeah, no, I certainly appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny.
Well, I was able to pick up a couple of new games.
I see these look adorable and thematic.
Haven't broken them out yet because we're now officially at October 1st, and now is the time.
Okay.
We talked about Boop earlier. Well, I was able to pick up a copy of Boop, which is basically the same game with a new skin on it.
Yeah.
My daughter's, as I mentioned at the beginning of this or earlier, that my daughter's birthday was this weekend, and she's a cat person.
Okay.
And so we are always giving her cat themed games. We gave her all the cats and all those. And
Crazy Cat Lady is a solid little game.
Yeah, I think we gave her that as well.
Yep.
And so I gave her 2 copies of Boop, the original Boop and Boop. And then we picked up Mists Over Carcassonne.
Yeah.
It's been around for about a year or so, and it turns Carcassonne into a co-op, and so that's kind of fun. And when the ghosts appear, you can make certain choices that alleviate the ghosts, or you can choose to do something else. And my friends, the Kelties, the people that we were playing with at Scythe at the game store, they turned me onto this game, and I think I got it at Miniature Market. I think.
Okay.
I think I got Boop and Carcassonne through Miniature Market, only because I couldn't find anywhere else. So those are the two newest games that I have picked up, and kind of in a holding pattern. Been focused on a few other things at the moment.
No worries, yeah, man. Well, just a quick. I did the Fowers Games has paperback and hardback the games.
Yep.
And they had a 10-year anniversary Kickstarter, so I was like, yay! And they had a new game coming up with Typewriter, which is a portable little play this at your, it's small enough to pack around and play on a smaller tabletop at a restaurant kind of thing.
Yep, I actually backed that. I backed that.
Yay, cool. And they sent out a little, pardon?
Because of you.
Oh, thank you. So they sent out a little update that said, hey, we're doing a final edit on these rules. Anybody want to help us out and put some eyes on these things? And I said, sure.
That's
so
awesome.
I spent a couple of days doing a little copy editing and asking questions about the layout and some sort of stuff, and got some nice notes back from Sky, who's the guy who's their sort of production manager over there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of fun to dig into this, look at the rules. I think Typewriter is going to be a super fun game. Paperback is going to come with a bunch of different modes to play it, and just some really great stuff. I think it's going to be a super great product. So I'm looking forward to when those fulfill. But it was also just kind of fun to see, oh yeah, here's their PDF, and I get to play around with it.
Yeah, it's neat when you can do stuff like that. I actually did some beta testing for D&D Beyond before Wizards of the Coast bought it.
Cool.
Yeah, Adam Bradford had put out a beta program and was looking for some help on the iPhone app. And because I had done some iPhone app development, I said, sure. And
Very
so that was kind of fun. And I offered them some feedback, and I think I even identified a little bit of an opportunity to fix something. We won't call it a bug. I think it was just more of a workflow kind of thing. But yeah, it's always fun when you can collaborate that way and be part of the crowdsource that helps certain things. Yeah, I saw that request out, and I didn't even think about it that you might respond to that. So that's awesome.
It is right in the middle of my skill set.
I was going to say, that's on brand for sure.
Yeah. I'm not doing any iPhone dev, but I can do some, and I know enough about games to actually offer useful feedback too, right? Instead of just 100%. Here's you need another need another comma here or whatever. So.
Well, I did actually back one other thing that I did not mention. I backed Max Darth Black Paint.
Oh,
the deepest black pigment for enthusiasts. My buddy Chris Keener, friend of the show, composer of our music at the beginning and the end.
Fantastic, thank you.
Sent it to me as I don't know if he sent it to me as a joke or he really wanted me to check it out. I did.
What's it? It's called Max.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes, but I'll put it in the chat between you and I right now on the Zoomer.
Yes.
So you can see it.
Or not see it.
Or not see it, as the case is. Yeah. There we go.
Got it. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So it's just I can't even remember what I backed. I mean I didn't get the full blown thing, but I did get the paint and a couple of their other add-ons, their other paint colors. Because I thought they were kind of interesting paint opportunities. It's from Green Stuff World. It's I think they're either in Spain or Portugal. And they had some other things that you could get through the Kickstarter that I was like, I really don't want all that stuff because they have some similar things to what Game Envy had put out that I'm like, well, I already got that. I don't need another version of that. But they did have a couple of things that I thought were interesting that I was able to just go ahead and get from their store without having to do the Kickstarter.
Right.
But I just focused on paints for the Kickstarter, which was it was less expensive and. But I just thought the way that their paint works with certain types of effects, that could be interesting with some of the things that I'm hoping to do. So anyway, just more of a creative thing. I thought was pretty cool. So
that looks awesome. Yeah.
So I did back that. But yeah.
Cool.
So
just the last thing I've got here is the first game night of the semester, first game day, I guess, because it's 8:30 in the morning.
Yes.
And got my students, and so it's a 50-minute class, so I do a very tiny little bit at the beginning of class, and we've got like maybe 40 minutes to play, so it has to be very short games. So I have them playing pairs, which is kind of a blackjack variant where you're trying not to get a pair. If you do, you take those for points, and then there's a first loser and everybody else wins. Similo is a cute series of games that are kind of like a stripped down version of Codenames, where you've got a display of animals or mythical people or different kinds of things, and you're trying to give silent clues to the players, and they are trying to find the card. So it's a kind of co-op there. Timeline, a classic. You can find it everywhere. You're building a timeline, sort of a history trivia game. The game, it's just always a good one. And then the students just love, hey, that's my fish.
Yep.
Because it takes about a minute and a half to teach, and then they get very, very cutthroat. It's hilarious to watch.
That's awesome. That's, I got to say, that's always one of my favorite things about the podcast is when you talk about the game day in the classroom. And I think that's just sort of fun kind of thing. And I wish that when we were in school that we had something similar. I mean, obviously we had Interim at Wofford that would have been a platform for that. In fact, I understand that they've actually done an Interim around D&D.
That's cool.
Recently, like in the last 5 years.
That's awesome.
Which is is awesome, but is a bummer because I would love to take a month and just go down there and do that at my alma mater, but somebody beat me to the punch.
Furman has MAX, which is very similar, just 3 to 4 weeks of just one class a day. And my MAX proposal went through, so I will be spending the month of May reading about and playing tabletop games. So
love it.
Yes.
Sounds like a good opportunity to employ Megan Cannell.
Yep. And buy a bunch of games for the class.
That too.
Mm-hmm.
At the university's expense.
That's what we're hoping for. But also just play games for 2 or 3 hours a day, every day in May.
I mean, that's very cool. I'm a little envious.
Life goals, man.
And you get paid for it.
Yeah.
It's private school, so I can't complain to the South Carolina taxpayers.
You cannot.
No, that's awesome. Well, and if you think about it, I mean, part of the thing college is teaching people life skills, and board games serves a lot of different purposes in that regard. Number one, it teaches us how to decompress and chill.
Yes. It
teaches us how to interact with one another in an environment that is not like, can I get fired for this?
Right.
And so I think it teaches us how to have fun.
And we'll talk about a bunch of those things. We'll talk about mental health and how you can interact with other people, the importance of doing that, how games can facilitate this, all of these things. We have a lot of, and even the question of what is a game? Do games participate in some larger cultural stuff? Can we think of them as art? All these kinds of fun questions too, as well as playing a bunch of games and saying, do these work for that?
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have for me this week. No, we got a lot going on in October. It'll be a busy month, and hopefully we can get a bunch of. I'm hoping to get some October themed games out there. Not only the ones that I've mentioned in terms of Boop and Carcassonne, but this is also a good time to pull out Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and Blood on the Clock Tower, and Haunted Mansion, and Horrified. All of those. So I'm sure that those are going to get some play this month. But as usual, you can find us at layitonthetable.show, where you can find us on your favorite podcast platform. If one of those just happens to be Apple Podcasts, we invite you to leave us a review and maybe give us a couple of stars along the way. That would be great. Tell us what we are getting right. Tell us what we're getting wrong. Tell us what you like about this. I mean, the podcast industry is getting very nichey, whatever we want to call that. And so, obviously we like to know what people are thinking out there. You can also find us at Board Game Geek, both as a guild as well as episodes of the podcast. And then finally, episodes, the video aspect of this episode does show up every time on YouTube, and you can find us on the Geek and Southern YouTube channel. Woo-hoo. As usual, I am Joe Mahaffey. I am not bored. I am board gaming.
And I am James Engelhardt, hoping that all your tiebreakers break your way.
See you next time.
1, 2, 3, 4.